Member for Fantut-Gwitchin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is my pleasure to rise on the last day of the 33rd Assembly and pay tribute to Vitsai Chodrin, or Big Caribou Days, and the importance of the porcupine caribou herd. The porcupine caribou herd were literally running through the streets of Old Crow last week, Madam Speaker. A video posted on Facebook of a herd of caribou running past the Chief J. Gitlett School in Old Crow has now surpassed 65,000 views. I had the pleasure to participate in the celebration of the caribou once again last week, and it was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to our community, to the organizers, especially Teresa Frost and Tata, also known as Tasha Frost, and all the volunteers. It was so awesome to see everyone in Old Crow laughing and smiling and participating all weekend. Vitsai Chodrin Caribou Days is celebrated every year on May long weekend when the Fantut-Gwitchin people celebrate the return of the porcupine caribou herd. Madam Speaker, each spring, the 200,000 strong porcupine caribou herd travel to their birthing grounds, and between 40 and 50,000 caribou calves are born on the Arctic coastal plain, and calving will begin in a few days. It is because of the Vitsai, the caribou, that we as Gwitchin people have been able to maintain and thrive in our way of life. For thousands of years, we have depended on this herd for our sustenance, for our food, for our clothing, shelter, tools, medicine, and even games. Imagine hundreds of thousands of caribou and their newborn calves running across the tundra, hooves thundering, magnificent antlers pointing towards the midnight sun. Every spring and fall, excitement fills the air and lifts the spirits of our remote Gwitchin villages as we welcome back the migration of the porcupine caribou herd, which sustains our way of life. The Gwitchin are one of the northernmost indigenous peoples living in 15 small villages scattered across the vast area extending from northeast Alaska in the United States and northern Yukon and the Northwest Territories in Canada. The lives of our Gwitchin people are inextricably and spiritually linked to the caribou, which roam our northern landscape today, much as the buffalo once did on the Great Plains. Madam Speaker, the buffalo were nearly wiped out, millions of them. But today, we have an opportunity to protect the porcupine caribou herd and keep alive the Gwitchin way of life. A quote translated to English: "We are caribou people. Caribou are not just what we eat, they are who we are. They are in our stories and song and the whole way we see the world. Caribou are our life. Without the caribou, we would not exist." That was a quote from Elder Sarah James from Arctic Village, Alaska. In 1988, in Arctic Village, Alaska, with an increased threat of oil and gas development in the birthplace and nursery grounds of the porcupine caribou herd, the Gwitchin Nation came together and agreed unanimously to speak with one voice in opposition to oil and gas development on the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. A very specific mandate, Madam Speaker. I was there in 1988 as a teenager, and to this day, it was the most powerful exhibition of solidarity that I have ever experienced in my lifetime. It was a life-changing experience, Madam Speaker. I will always remember when the oldest Gwitchin elder at that time spoke to the Gwitchin Nation, and he said, translated to English, "When you speak around the world to protect our caribou, you do it in a good way, and you don't harm anyone. To accomplish this task, the Gwitchin community has established the Gwitchin Steering Committee, and I recognize their tireless efforts over the decades to protect the caribou birthing grounds in our Gwitchin way of life. Our elders recognize that oil development in the calving grounds was a threat to the very heart of our people. The elders knew that without their nursery, the caribou would not survive. Madam Speaker, last weekend in Old Crow, as we always have, we paid homage and celebrated the caribou with hundreds of our friends and visitors. We danced, we talked, we played, and we prayed. Everything we did had a connection and a respect for the caribou, from fashion shows to talent shows, races, log sawing, muskrat calling. We showed the youth and our visitors the symbiotic relationship the caribou have with everything. Madam Speaker, many shared their stories and expressed that their journey with the caribou began in their mother's womb. The blood that flows through us before we are born, when we are growing in our mother's womb, much of that nutrition comes from the caribou. That's where that relationship starts. I was once camped beside the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in my former job as senior park warden for Vuntut National Park. And one morning I was walking towards the refuge in a mountain pass, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and I heard what I thought was thunder. So I stopped, and I saw a cow caribou and a calf come over the pass. And in just minutes, I was surrounded by 20,000 caribou. I felt so insignificant, and a sight, an experience, and a power that I will never forget. The Porcupine Caribou Herd birthing grounds on the coastal plain is sacred, not only to the Gwich'in, but to millions of North Americans who have time and time again voiced their steadfast support for permanent protection of the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge as wilderness. Many Yukoners are so proud of the fact that we have such a wonderful resource within our boundaries of our territory. And I believe Yukoners want to see our continued leadership on this issue. Masit Cho to the Yukon government for supporting the Vuntut Gwich'in First Nations effort over the decades with an annual $50,000 transfer to our community, and also to the Porcupine Caribou Management Board for their excellent work and the men and women who have dedicated their lives to the health of the herd. Madam Speaker, this is also about a healthy northern ecosystem, and it's about the intrinsic value that we have a treasure that is alive and well in our territory. Masi Cho Shilaknai, for the hundreds of times the people of Old Crow have traveled to Washington, D.C. to speak with and educate the congressmen and the senators and the American public, and to help us protect the Porcupine Caribou calving grounds in Alaska. It's very hard work, I know. Translated to English, it's called a sacred place where life begins. And I say to my fellow Yukoners today, long live the Porcupine Caribou. It's a herd that the Gwich'in Nation depends on. It is the foundation of our culture and traditions, and essential to the social, economic, and spiritual fabric of our being. A relationship that is difficult for some to understand. I know. That is why we celebrate and we teach all who will listen about Vitsai Chodrin, because it is about the Vitsai, the caribou, that we as Gwich'in people have been able to maintain our way of life for thousands and thousands of years, well before the great pyramids of Egypt were built. It has been eloquently articulated on the floor of this assembly by every Vuntut Gwich'in MLA about how important the Porcupine Caribou herd is to our people. I reaffirm in this legislature today that the destiny of the Porcupine Caribou herd is without a doubt the same destiny of that of the Gwich'in people. They are inseparable. The intricacies of our relationship we have with the caribou is what makes us unique. The caribou give us strength and a sense of security when they are healthy, and without them, our culture would simply perish. Madam Speaker, to me, the inherent Aboriginal right to harvest also includes our responsibility to conserve for future generations, to protect the caribou, and our traditional uses and values. The Gwich'in Nation's accomplishments in protecting their traditional source of sustenance are significant. One of the reasons for our success was the high degree of community involvement in the process and the way in which support was solidified at the grassroots level. Although much of the work to protect the porcupine caribou was done in cities and houses of government, the essence of the effort came from those directly affected by the loss of the caribou, the Gwich'in. Although the organizational structure of lobbies and educational efforts and committees created by the Gwich'in is not new, blending traditional values and a modern approach is innovative. The Gwich'in, faced with a problem, acted according to traditions while benefiting from an international lobby and public education effort. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I'd like to share a message for our youth. It translates to caribou. In the future, they are going to live. There have been so many eloquent voices over the years that have spoke to this important issue. So I will end with this. The Gwich'in relationship with the northern Arctic ecosystem and the porcupine caribou that is thousands and thousands of years old, Madam Speaker. If that relationship becomes extinct and is gone, to me, that would impoverish humankind, and we shall never allow that to happen. These could be very well my last words in this chamber, Madam Speaker, so I wanted them to be about the caribou. Dearest constituents, my family and friends, thank you for your support. To my fellow members of this Assembly, I salute you and I wish you well. Haik Cho, Madam Speaker.